Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, Joey McGuire, Zach Kittley recapping the final knock at the end zone door to finish the game Saturday. Regrets? And speaking of regrets, any regrets regarding the offseason bravado? Joey McGuire answers that question next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right.
Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks to those making us their first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, we got a full boat here today. We're going to hear from Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire along with offensive coordinator Zach Kittley. Coming up in just a bit, we'll get into some really interesting thoughts from Coach McGuire on any possible regret of the offseason confidence and bravado. Would he do it the same if he had it to do again? We'll get to his thoughts on that coming up in just a moment. But first, why not just kick her off with one of the most visible points in the game that a fan has the opportunity to criticize, comment on, observe, analyze, and assess, Chris. And that was the final handful of plays as the Red Raiders were knocking on the door, trying to get into the end zone, but they did not. And as you might anticipate, Coach McGuire, Coach Kittley asked about this as they kick off the week with the weekly press luncheon yesterday. And you will hear from both Coach Kittley and Coach McGuire.
We were very effective running the ball. I don't think we should have run it 4 plays. I don't think we should have. But I think when you're down there at that point, where I felt good was I felt good about the play calls. If you go back and you look 2 of the 4 play calls, well, first of all, first play call, you get a Mike linebacker matched up man-to-man against Nehemiah Martinez. So you want that play call. The second one, you get a fingertip on a ball that's thrown to a 6'9" tight end. And guy made a good play. I mean, you're talking about, that's the thing about sports, but this game and so many games like it, it's a game of inches. So right there, then, the third down call, you get a wide open, it is a wide open tight end. There's nobody around him. And then the fourth down call, we get pressure on Barron. And so that was a tough thing. So whenever I say that, I wish that I would have gone back as, could you put yourself in better positions to be closer to the goal line? If a play breaks down, do you scramble in the goal line or something like that versus that? And then we were effective running the football, and so hindsight's 20/20, when you go back. I felt whenever I hear, Kittley say this over the headset and it's a good play call, if I felt like it wasn't going to be or if it was something, hey, let's do this, then 100% say it every time. We motioned out with Nehemiah, hoping that we were going to get the matchup man-to-man, and that was a called play. The second play to Mason was a called play. And you kind of had Mason open and you had Brown really open, Jordan Brown. And then the last one, we knew it was going to come scot-free, and it did. Barron had to get the ball over the linebacker. He did. Just a little high for both. And so they were all called plays.
It's always after the fact type deals, because again, I look at those plays and I felt like we had guys open and they were good play calls. Again, after you look back at it and you had those timeouts, do I wish I ran the ball? Sure, but again, to me, what makes me a little more upset is just the execution of the plays and the progressions and just barely missing out. But when you look back on it, again, I was proud of how we played in the second half. Clearly, the first half was embarrassment. We didn't play very good at all. Had a lot of things there that we just didn't execute on. And then second half, thought we played really well. Thought Taj, as y'all know, ran tough 2 weeks in a row. Really gave it his all, and is playing really well right now. So again, after the fact, clearly looking back on it, maybe try to run 1 or 2. But again, at the time, I felt really good about those play calls, and we're just a hair off executing on those.
Good morning, Chris. Welcome to the show. Now let's argue over these 4 calls. Whole lot to digest there as they run us through it play by play, really, both of them.
Yeah, and that's what's going to get lost, when we remember this game is that,
you had a touchdown. I mean, it's just Jaden York couldn't have been any more wide open. I mean, he's just standing there doing jumping jacks. And, slightly high ball, but he jumps a bit too early, I think. As you hear them say, Barron had to get the ball over the linebacker a bit, but he's wide open. And, like otherwise we're not, maybe we're still playing, and then we're debating something, a different play call in overtime because you would have tied the game at that point, and I think, it was, because I was, I guess, I don't know, lightly criticized for what I asked Coach McGuire after the game. And one of the things that I think people wanted to know, and I just, like, from my stance, I'm not following the stats like on whatever, and I don't really I don't know who's got what carry, passing yard, all these things. It was raining and I'm trying to write stuff down. My Sharpie doesn't work, so I was keeping notes in my phone on this particular game. But I am handed, right before I talked to Coach McGuire, I'm handed a stat sheet, and it's the one pager. It's like the quickie version of the stats, just like a condensed version.
Final box.
I look down and it shows Taj Brooks with 25 carries, and I think, well, I mean, that's and I think, Matt Dowdy even told me that's a career high. So I don't think to ask, why didn't you run the ball more, or why didn't you run it late? Right. I think people's issue was, why didn't you maybe get the running game going earlier on in the game? And maybe we'll see Taj get going, with 30 plus carries a game. But again, this past Saturday was a career high as far as carries go. I think in the bowl game versus Ole Miss, I think Tyler Shuck had 30 carries. I think maybe his, I don't know if sacks or whatever count is that too, but and I think where the fans, are coming from, or the frustration is, I think that we kind of are starting to see that Taj is your best player on offense, and for him not to touch the ball in the most crucial situation maybe is the most frustrating thing. And Zach tells you, well, now knowing what I know now, damn sure I would have run it. But you had a touchdown to Jaden York on third down. You felt like you had a good matchup with Martinez on a middle linebacker. And the first one, you had one to Tharp with fingertip, whatever, and then you just get pressure on you. And then the last one. So,
well, and as you'll hear Coach McGuire say coming up in just a bit, it's a game of inches, and you never know what inch is going to make up the difference. And it could have been any number of those things, which is also why it's always very difficult to just blame it on that 1 inch or that one player or that one play, whatever it might have been. Sometimes you can. It's a little more clear cut. But when you lose a game by a touchdown, there are obviously a lot of things to pick apart that could have made that difference. And when you're 1-3 and you're really over against, real programs on your level, then everything obviously is under the microscope to be picked apart. These comments, specifically Coach Kittley's comments, Chris, really just bring to mind for me the thought that there is nothing new under the sun. Because what he is saying in a weird way reminds me of a gentleman in a beautiful blue suit and a sharp as a razor fedora, because I've heard this before. Let me explain. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. And buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be a stress-inducing experience, but if you've ever done it, you know it can be, especially last minute. But not with Gametime. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for sports, concerts, and much, much more. Not just fast, secure, and easy to use, but you're also going to find unbeatable deals on last-minute tickets. And with their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing and start pre-gaming. Download the Gametime app today and rest easy with the Gametime guarantee, knowing you're always going to get the best prices, and you can have them in a flash delivered straight to your phone. Snag tickets without the stress with Gametime, and just download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets and the lowest price. Guaranteed. What he is saying in a weird way reminds me of a gentleman in a beautiful blue suit and a sharp as a razor fedora, because I've heard this before. Let me explain. Do you remember the name Tom Landry? Once upon a time, there's a great NFL Films clip where he's talking about his perfect scheme and the players that keep screwing it up, Chris. The plan is always perfect. It's the players that are getting in the way. And that's why I have there on the side of the screen, perfect scheme, flawed players, because I do still think for every offensive coordinator and really every head coach, every defensive coordinator, there is still in 2023, after like 100 years of football, there's still a balance and a juggling act for these coaches to understand the middle ground between what they want to do and what their players can do. What's your best suited to be able to do in real time when the lights are on and the fur is flying? And I just still hear a lot of that, I think, from Coach Kittley when you come down to the thought of, well, I don't necessarily regret what we tried to do. I regret how we executed it or what we did whenever we actually snapped the ball. I think that can be kind of dicey territory sometimes because, again, it's on you as the coach to put your players in the best situation to be successful. And as they just described, obviously you had one there with York where really you were in a position to be successful. You just didn't make it happen. But I'm sure you've heard that thought before. You may even remember that Landry clip, him being the one that says it. But hey, here we are all these years later, still kind of fighting that same fight.
And I would tell you what's interesting is that we want to run the ball more crowd and all that stuff. And yet you have a ton of wide receivers on this team that feel like you weren't throwing it enough and feel like you weren't targeting them enough, feel like they're not getting enough touches, feel like they could help. I mean, you're
really.
Oh yeah, I mean, like think.
Well,
about
do you mean
it.
Just like naturally I'm a wide receiver, so I'm always open type of thing, or is there real frustration? You think?
I think there's probably a little bit of both, actually,
Okay.
Because think about who hasn't really impacted a game this year from all these names that we know. Has Jerron Bradley really impacted a game yet?
First one on my mind.
Okay.
No.
Has Miles Price really impacted a game yet? Has Dre McCray really impacted a game yet?
No. Chris, behind Taj Brooks, my security blanket next on that list is Mason Tharp.
Yeah.
In a bizarre way.
Yeah. You know, he's a bit dinged up right now. I think we'll see what that looks like as the week goes along. But, I mean, yeah. I think Xavier White is somebody that could really help you. I mean, he dominated West Virginia last year, but he just hasn't been able to get on track yet. And it's just funny because it's just we were talking about that yesterday. It's like the whole Cameron Valdez thing. I was so big on what he could potentially bring, and he hasn't gotten out of the starting gates yet. You know, and then Dre McCray, I feel like there's been just a brief mention of his name. But and if you go look at it and you talk to people that are around it, he's been open and getting behind the defense and this and that. But it's just one of these deals where maybe that's the play where you just get this pressure and you have to check it down underneath or you take a sack or whatever. I think they intentionally try to get him the ball this past Saturday, but it's wet, it's rainy. So it's just one of these deals where, again, I use that word disjointed a bit, like where you're just trying to figure out what the right mix is. And now you've got all these injury concerns and you're trying, okay, like what's best for us now? So
well,
I don't know.
That's leading into a second question here to wrap up this part of the conversation before we get back to Coach McGuire. What's best for us now? Do you think there's any kind of evolving with what they're asking these guys to do? Maybe more specifically offensively, but week to week, given some of what's occurred and some of what you're describing injury-wise?
I think it's a good question. I think they went out of their way to tell you yesterday, Joey and Zach both did, that we won't dumb it down with Barron. He can run the full complement of offense, you know, and all that stuff. And I think Zach did say you probably won't see him do as much changing of the play at the line just because he's not as advanced at it as Tyler was. So I think that there was some line of comment about that.
Yeah, and he also alluded to what you said in that when he does change it, he's a guy that's more likely to go to the air.
Yep.
I think caught something on the ground.
This is what the people wanted, right? I mean, right. all the whole stands, everybody on Red Raider Sports,
all the Freona, Texas.
Oh yeah, all the people on the Book of Faces there. You know, this whatever you're looking at. It's like, hey, give me Barron. Here we go. It just looks different. Like turn him loose. And now all of a sudden, I've seen a few like, well, his footwork is a bit, you know, like this where these the arm angles or this is who
Right.
he is, man. Like he's a gunslinger. He's going to go out there and throw it all over and like try to get everybody involved. And the lights come on, and that's when he's kind of at his best. And
we did get good news that he's going to be good to go, at least as they described it yesterday. There was some concern, I think, about that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He will play.
I don't know if he's good to go. Easy for me to say, but
yeah. I think it's football, and I don't know what the week for him looks like, but I think he's absolutely expected to play on Saturday, and so that's all you can ask for. I think these weeks of practice coming up are going to be fairly interesting because I think you're missing a ton of interior linebackers all of a sudden, and then you've got these old guys that are dinged up that you probably honestly go, hey man, we're going to shut you down on like a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and so you're gonna maybe this weekend or you're going to have some of these guys playing in the game that really hadn't done a whole lot during the week, just because. Not severe injuries, but you're older, and we know what you can do. So let's get you through the one of those deals.
It is September 26th, folks. Hey, buckle up. We haven't even got through the first month, and we may be like skeleton crew mode already during practice. So yeah, keep hope alive. I'm throwing it in 15 minutes early today. I stole your line. I just want it out there. I'm already looking for a little hope, Chris. Maybe we get another one at the end of the show. Before we get to that, let's get back to Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire, and what obviously I think is on the minds of a lot of Tech fans, wondering whether or not he might regret some of the offseason bravado that was shown and some of what was said. We all remember the double take worthy, well, this team would beat the last one by 14 points about 5 minutes into spring camp. There's so many things, obviously, this offseason that was said as far as instilling confidence in what Tech could do. You're sitting here at 1-3. Season is not over, but nowhere near the start that you wanted to get off to. And Coach McGuire was asked, would you do things the same if you had them to do over again? Here's Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire. First, today's episode brought to you by DoorDash. And if you need groceries this week, but you got no time for the store, try grocery delivery from DoorDash, and you're going to get everything you want delivered when you need it right to your door. You've already trusted DoorDash to bring your restaurant favorites to your door, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually, delivers. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you're going to get exactly what you ordered, or they're going to make it right. So you can sit back and enjoy quality groceries like you picked them yourself. So right now, get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20 and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. So try DoorDash today and get what you want at your door right when you need it, and get 50% off your first order up to $20 with our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Coach McGuire was asked, would you do things the same if you had them to do over again?
Yes. That it's really frustrating. Like I came into the meeting with the coaches last year, and I'm like, okay, let's go through this. Who we lost? We lost 2 guys last year on offense. And nobody can tell me that Taj Brooks is not made up for any and everybody that we had last year on the offensive side of the ball. You can't say that we were better with the way he's running the football right now. And everybody knows how I feel about Roderick. That's my dude. But we cannot say that we're not running the football better right now than we did last year. And so it's really frustrating. It goes back to the question of bad football. We have got to eliminate bad football. We've probably dropped the ball more in 4 games than possibly we have in the entire year last year. The one thing that I really appreciate about last year, when we were not explosive the way we wanted to be explosive, the one thing we did was we continued drives. We had some long drives last year. And then one thing, it's been a thorn in our side, is third down. And it's not just not converting on third down. It's not putting ourselves in position to go for it on fourth down. Even though we went for it 8 times, I think we were 5 of 8 on the fourth down. You go back to week 1 and week 2, we were so bad on third down that we couldn't even get in position to be aggressive to go for it on fourth down. Now, would that happen with the 14 points and everything like that? I don't think we're playing well enough right now to say that would happen. But I can't sit here and say, And I told the guys yesterday, I'm going to be honest with y'all. It was me, the players, Lance, our head strength coach, because I wanted him to hear my message, and Coach Martin and Huff, because those guys, really carry my message through the hallways and in the weight room. And I asked the coaches to do the 4-game self-scout because I wanted to meet and go through some of the stuff we're doing well and some of the stuff we got to correct. And I told the players, I said, this is just how I am, because whenever I believe something as much as I believe in this team, I'm not going to back away from it. So I guess if everybody wants me to change and try to be like every other coach and say, shucks, we might be pretty good and, protect the team and protect myself from criticism, I can do that. I'm not worried about the criticism that I'm getting. Guys, I'm telling y'all, I've done this for a long time. Everybody says, well, that was at the high school level. I've done this for a long time. There's nothing that come out of any fan or any person's mouth that I have not heard before. Where I hate it is if I was wrong, that the players are feeling that criticism or the players are feeling that. Because, man, they're coming to work every day and they're working their tails off. And they're going to do the same thing tomorrow, and we're going to find a way to get this thing right. And so, I don't know. Was I wrong in being the true believer in the players that I have? I don't think so. I'm not going to back off of it. We're going to find a way to get this thing done, and we're going to play better football, and I believe that, and I think the players do too. I asked their comments, and the one thing that I will say about this team, it's a very mature team from the position of self-awareness. And Rabbit and Bryce both stood up and talked about the things that we as a whole can improve, and it was very self-aware of the things that we're not doing as a collective. Sit down with Kenny Perry and said, did I misstep or misspeak here? And I was just asking him for his opinion, but I really don't care about his opinion from the standpoint is I don't believe that. Like, I don't. I mean, I've been this way for 29 years, and, man, it's hard for me to change whenever you believe as deeply as you do in these players and this staff and this program. And so we're going to find a way to get it right.
There's a couple of things that stick out to me there. One is I don't think you want him to change. People have to be who they are, and this is who Joey is. He's a positive guy. He believes in what he believes in, and you can't – if the first sign of adversity, you can't start to waver and wilt and all that. And I do think he's very transparent and refreshing, and you don't want a coach speak type guy. We all have seen what that looks like. I think it's very telling that I think what I hear him saying and all that is that this team knows that they are this close, but that's not what anybody wants to hear, because they know that people want results. They want results, and they know that what people are saying. They know they've seen a lot of the ugliness out there on the streets, and so they're self-aware, I think the term that he used, and they understand why they're losing some of these close games, whether it be a dump. And that's the thing when Joey's talking about his team, obviously now you're thinking, well, I'm talking about it with the thought that Shuck is going to play the whole season, that I'm going to have Isaac Smith, and some of these things, but you also don't envision things like all the drop passes that you've had, the untimely penalties. You don't envision that back in March, and thinking about those things. And I think just how razor thin the margin for error has been, because it's not too far off, Callan, where you could have been 5-7 last year if a lot of these same things that are happening now happened last year, where you could have, saw the whole thing swing a different way. And it's just right there, but you're in that little, margin where it's kind of swung the other way just a little bit. And you went from 4-0 in these games to now 0-3, but this isn't something that, a head coach can envision when he's looking at his roster and looking at what is back, and you expect the same production from these guys. But again, 1-3 is 1-3, man. And if you look at the Big 12 standings, you're looking up at everybody else right now through the 4 weeks or so.
That was really interesting to process what he was saying, because, I mean, obviously when you get in these situations as a fan and you're discussing it, You've got to understand that one guy's approach may not be your approach, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. Certainly, I've said before, whether it's going back to like the punt or not to punt decision, things like that. Not my style, not something I would do 10 times out of 10. But I've also never been offered multi-million-dollar contracts to coach a football game, so I like to defer to those that are the experts and professionals. And everybody's got their own style, so I'm not mad at a guy doing things differently than my little habits would have me do. And Chris, I do think some of the offseason comments were jarring to me as a fan, partly because of the age we live in that I've already mentioned this before. It's not a page out of the Parcells playbook. It's not exactly that approach we've gotten kind of so accustomed to. And I think it's got a lot of wisdom in it. It's a different approach. And so at the beginning, it was just jarring because it was different. And the first thing I remember is the comment that he was asked about specifically, they beat last year's team by 14 points, which to him in that setting, maybe kind of throwaway. I don't know. To us, it wasn't. And maybe next time around, he might consider that differently as far as it being throwaway or something that people would really cling to. But he says it right there, Chris. And that's kind of what leaves me with some confusion in that he talks about, I don't care about the criticism I get. I care about the criticism the players get. And he also, I think right before that, had said, could I have done something differently and protected myself or protected the team? And to that, I would have said, yes, absolutely, with the team aspect. I don't care about the head coach protecting himself. Again, you're paid more than a small country in Africa to coach this team and makes in a year. And I just feel like I don't care about your criticism. Do whatever you want to do. But I think it's fair for fans to wonder why you open your team up to this type of thing. And I guess sometimes maybe that's why a Parcells playbook, if you will, doesn't have that kind of page because of the criticism the team could possibly suffer through. It's a new experience for me, so I'm trying to process how I feel about it anyway. And when you go 1-3, it's easy to say, oh, what a dumb idea. This is insane. So hindsight's still a part of this, but I don't know how many times you've seen an approach like this. Do you remember a head coach that you either covered or were like a fan of that team that, was so kind of bold in what they thought was happening and what they wanted to do? It's kind of a new one on me.
Yeah, and it's I think that's the comment that was made maybe after the very first spring practice.
Yeah, it was like a breakout practice session.
Yeah, and I'd be willing to bet you that, nobody at the time thought this is going to get brought up over and over and over and over again. And so, maybe going forward he wouldn't. But I think that he gave you an answer on, I just look at kind of who we lost and what we had back and, and all those things. And I think we also forget because you're 3-1 at this time last year. You're 1-3 this year, but last year's team also was at 4-5 at one point. They went on a stretch to where you started off 3-1 and then you went what would that be 1-4 over that the middle of the season. And I'm sure that he's remembering those times as well, like where it just kind of, just couldn't get over the hump. We're losing games, couldn't keep a quarterback healthy, on and on it goes. And so there's probably some of that from his standpoint back several months ago as well, which was fairly fresh.
Sure.
So I don't know. Anyway, it's just when you lose, man, everything sucks, man. That's just all there is to it. It's like, play calls, what we said back in March, this is just part of losing, man. It just
kind of, except prior to some other losers, there hadn't been the crowing. So it is different to me as a fan.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to process because at the same time, you love a guy that's showing some confidence. It's like, I'm down to ride. And at the same time, it makes you pucker up tighter than the snare drum if you're a lifelong Tech fan, because you know what we are historically. But response to adversity is going to be key any week, any season. Last year, we actually did see some positive responses to adversity, unlike what we saw in the Kingsbury era, improved a little bit in the Wells era, but we really saw it flush last year. Will we see it this year? Because you got it right out of the gates. You're right, Chris. Instead of that kind of early season burst, then mid-season lull, finishing with a burst, we've got the lull right out of the gates. As I said, the debut dud there in Laramie, Wyoming, and we're still dudding, buddy. So hopefully we're going to break that seal with the Cougars coming to town. Chris, enjoyed it as always, my man. Appreciate the insights and perspectives that you always have to offer up, and we'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, man. We'll do it again. Let's go. Keep hope alive, everybody.
We're still crowing, baby. Flapping our wings, clucking, bucking. You know what we're doing. Okay, rolling on with another episode tomorrow. So subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey. We'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.